All right. Welcome back. Thank you. This is the last session before the summary track for the Ubuntu Online Summit. We have with us OpenStack Kilo updates and roadmap with the OpenStack team and such here. So I'll go ahead and let you guys take it away.
Thanks, Marco. Right, okay, so let's do some introductions first. So I'm James Page. I'm tech lead on the OpenStack engineering team, and then I'll just let the rest of the team introduce themselves.
Hi, sorry, Chuck. I'm Liam Ganoy on IRC, and I work on the OpenStack charms.
I'm Chuck Short. I work on OpenStack packaging and upstream stuff as well, and CLXD.
I'm Corey Bryant. I work on packaging and the OpenStack charms.
Hello, I'm Ryan Beisner. I work on testing Chuck and Corey and James and Liam's stuff.
Yeah, Ryan keeps one eye on us, keeps us on the straight and narrow. Awesome. Okay, so let's kick off with a bit of a Kilo recap. So you may or may not have noticed that the Kilo release is not yet in Ubuntu Vivid or the Kilo Cloud Archive. It's currently in our proposed testing pocket, going through testing, as it only released last Thursday. I had a quick catch up with the team earlier, and we reckon that it's going to be available in updates probably Monday or Tuesday next week. It's testing pretty well, just going through kind of final soak, make sure no regressions pop up. But apart from that, it's looking good. So that's almost complete release alignment with Kilo upstream. Our only diff is with Swift, where we've chosen to stick with the 2.2.2 release, which came out just prior to the final release candidate, which was a 2.3 release. The main reason for that is that causes a few issues, mainly due to the introduction of new Erasure coding backend, which was going to require some new dependency work very, very late on in cycle. So rather than take the risk of bringing in what was actually a beta feature and compromising Swift for OpenStack Kilo on Ubuntu, we decided to stick with the 2.2.2 release, which has proven pretty stable during testing. So this is our kind of first divergence. We did it for good reasons, and we should catch up during the Liberty cycle to get realigned. In terms of kind of core projects, we have all of the projects on the integrated release in Ubuntu OpenStack. So that's the normal suspects: Keystone, Cinder, Glance, Nova, Neutron, Heat, Solometer. I think that's the core ones we have in Ubuntu main. We have a number of integrated release projects also in Universe. So Sahara and Trove and Ironic are all in Ubuntu Universe. And we also have previews of Designate and Manila in Universe as well. So we've got a fairly broad range of packaging. The ones that are in Ubuntu main are fully supported by the Ubuntu OpenStack and server teams and by the Ubuntu security team as well. The ones in Universe are more broadly supported by the wider community, although they do get some tending from this team as well. So they're not all by themselves. So that's where we are with packaging. Like I said, we hopefully have the release out by next Monday, Tuesday, and then we'll be back into business as usual and moving forward with Liberty in the current development cycle. We also had a fairly active release in terms of charms. A number of new features were enabled. So during the Juno cycle, in actual fact, Neutron enabled two kind of key features in the Neutron reference implementation in the ML2 OVS plugin, and they were the distributed virtual router, and router HA. So kind of two mutually exclusive features, so described as experimental in Juno, more stability in Kilo, and a wider range of networking option support to enable those. So Liam's done a good job on enabling those in the charms in our 15.04 charm release. So they're fairly simple to enable and use. The consideration with DVR as it pushes out your layer 3 routing functionality onto the compute nodes directly. So each compute node now needs an extra external port for north-south traffic routing for instances. You also get some optimizations in terms of east-west routing between instances on different tenant networks. With the router HAs, I said that's mutually exclusive to DVR. I know Liam's got a blog that he's going to post in the next day or so around this, so I won't spoil all the details, but basically that allows you to run routers in VIRP HA pairs on gateway nodes, providing a better level of north-south traffic, high availability in an OpenStack cloud. So two important features. I expect to see more improvement on those during the Liberty cycle, so one to watch.
It's probably just quickly worth mentioning that in that DVR example, if the guest doesn't have a floating IP, then external traffic's still going to get routed through the gateway.
Yeah, that's true. So you don't do away with gateway devices altogether, because you still need DHCP services and stuff like that in the cloud. And you're right, anything that doesn't have floating IP still has to do source route NATing via a standard north-south gateway unit. So they don't go away, but it's definitely more load balanced and more distributed than it was in previous releases. I'm trying to think what else we had come in 1504. So in the broader ecosystem, we had the Ceph Hammer stable release, Open vSwitch 2.3.1, which is the current long-term stable from upstream Open vSwitch. We should probably mention that Vivid switched to systemd. I don't know whether anybody noticed. Hopefully not. And that's moving our default init system over to systemd. So it's good that we're going to have a couple of interim releases prior to 1604 to bake that in and make it really solid. So that's awesome. The other thing that Chuck mentioned in his introduction was LexD, which is our lightweight container hypervisor for LexD containers. That's a piece of development that Canonical have been undertaking over the last 6 to 12 months as a separate team working on LexD itself. And Chuck and a couple of other folks have been working on the Nova Compute driver that we've been working on for LexD. So that basically allows you to use containers in the same way as you would instances. Chuck, is there anything you want to chip in on that? You've been the kind of primary developer on that, so anything you want to add there, kind of around its status or how to use it?
Sure. Basically, NCLXD allows you to run containers as instances. It's basically a second driver for Nova Compute. If you go to my blog, zulccs@wordpress.com, zulccs@wordpress.com, it tells you how to get started.
But broadly, it's the Nova Compute LexD package that gets you bootstrapped. We also got some charm support, haven't we, Chuck? So the Nova Compute charm, if you're deploying it on with 1504, supports a LexD option for vert type, and we'll pull in all the right bits and do all the right config to enable LexD integration. And another key part of that is it uses unprivileged containers for guest instances. So there's an increased level of security around the containers that are actually running on your container visors, I'm going to call them, rather than hypervisors, but that's probably the wrong word. Anyway, so there's some pretty cool stuff there, and there's a whole load of roadmap between now and 1604 to ensure that our LexD integration gets as close to feature parity as possible with the existing primary KVM, the vert driver that OpenStack has had since forever. So hopefully by the time we get to 1604, it's going to be a really good story. So this really is a testing-only feature right now. We're only providing it on 1504 due to the technology stack that it requires. But try it out, see what you think. But give us feedback. Chuck will be delighted to take notes and work on new features that people think are important. But LexD is a product in its own right, and I'd recommend anybody. Take a look at it, install it, and take a look at it. It's a nice way of interacting with containers. Has some nice image management features and some nice networking and storage features as well. So let me just check on my list of things. I think in the kind of broad OpenStack ecosystem area, that pretty covers pretty much what we did during the 1504 cycle. What else? No, that's pretty much it. This is kind of new round of updates around the Vert and QEMU to kind of latest released versions, but nothing significant to report there. Where are we going with 1510 development? I think we've got a whole round of, well, we'll obviously be shipping Liberty. I don't think we have any specific changes in terms of what's going to sit in Ubuntu main compared to Ubuntu Universe. I think we're fairly comfortable with the core infrastructure as a service components that we have in Ubuntu OpenStack. But I think we are going to have a little bit more focused on some of the things that are in Universe. So the two projects that sprung out from recent discussions were Manila and Designate, being kind of two broader ecosystem projects around infrastructure as a service things. So expect some focus on those around packaging and probably some charms for those as well, which I think we're going to switch to the new services framework that the charm ecosystem team have been developing. That should be interesting to watch over the next 6 months. So that kind of covers what's happening in distro. I expect we'll probably have the next stable release of Ceph. Any OpenVSwitch updates will just flow through naturally. That's kind of business as usual these days. But that probably covers the distro stuff. In terms of charm bits and pieces, I think we've got quite a lot on the roadmap. One of the things that's always been really awkward about deploying OpenStack using Juju, which, although is a very powerful experience, does lack some feedback about when it's baked, is we're going to be using the new Juju service features that the newer version of Juju has just introduced. This allows us to do unit and service level reporting from within the charm back to the user, so they can see A, what's going on at any given point in time, and B, the general health of any given unit or service that's being deployed. So that will give a much more a richer feedback loop to charm users who are deploying OpenStack on Ubuntu using the OpenStack charms. We've got a whole piece of work coming in around actions. Liam, do you want to talk about actions briefly, rather than me just spiel for the next half an hour? That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, sure. So with the OpenStack charms, it allows us to bake in the our experience of the best practices for deploying OpenStack, and what our actions is going to allow us to do is it's going to let us do a similar thing for the administration of that cloud, so that we can take the kind of best practice approach for doing particular things and have those encapsulated in the charms, and the administrator of the cloud will be able to just invoke them. So they'll be able to say, I can't quite remember the exact syntax, but it's a Juju action name this unit. So if you want to take down one of your compute nodes for maintenance, hardware maintenance, then you'll be able to say Juju action and say put it in maintenance mode, and the charm will understand all the components that need to be disabled and who needs to know about this, and will evacuate guests where possible off that compute node, and then it'll feed back to you and say, look, we're ready to go. So we're hoping to have that for sort of all the charms. This idea of maintenance. We want extended health, so a charm can tell you. So perhaps the database charm would be able to come back and say, this is where I am with my quotas. This is how much of my connection pool is used up, and things like that. So I think it's really exciting. It's going to allow us to sort of leverage Juju to maintain the cloud once it's deployed, and we've spoken to some kind of core users, and yeah, we've got lots of actions. There's lots of requests, so hopefully we'll get lots of those done and landed for the 1507 charm release.
I think that it's fair to say that anytime you've have ever had to SSH to a Juju deployed instance or unit to do something is a candidate for an action. So if folk are watching and they're looking at our action plans and they're going, yeah, but I always do this every day, or every week, or every month, then please ping one of us and let us know. Or you can even, actions are relatively simple to write, so we're open to accepting contributions on this side of stuff as well, please.
Absolutely.
So yeah, this is an open book. We can enrich everybody's experience by taking best practice from a very broad set of users. So this is a real good opportunity to feedback operational activities into the charms themselves, rather than just being more of a deployment and lifecycle management tool for units and services. So trying to think what else we had. So I mentioned a couple of new charms. So designate, Manila, probably on the list. We are going to be looking at the new Juju storage integration. So Juju's is growing, rather. Hasn't got all of them yet. Features around presenting file system, block devices, and object storage to units. So we'll probably be doing some refactoring around some of our storage integrations. I think Ceph, Swift will be the first candidates because they predominantly use block devices via config right now to bring them in line with the new feature and have storage model as a first-class citizen within the charms. The other piece is there's some new networking features coming along in Juju to bring networking more strongly into the Juju modeling language. And again, we'll be probably doing some refactoring around the multi-network support we have via config right now into the OpenStack charms as that comes along as well. So those activities will be predominantly driven by when those features appear upstream and are released by Juju. I think the networking one is probably most likely, networking and storage are probably the two that won't happen for 15.10. They'll probably push out to 16.01. But we should still have them for release in 12 months time, or 9 months time at least. So I think that's probably where we are. Let me just check my notes because there was a couple of other things. So a couple of cycles back, we did some work on a Nova Cells charm. Liam, do you want to talk about what's been happening upstream in OpenStack and kind of where we're going with that piece longer term?
Yeah. So yeah, we looked at the Nova Cells, and it looked like a really interesting project that would be a useful addition to our charms to enable you to scale out large number of compute nodes, so that they each cell has its own database and message broker and kind of as we used it had stayed in I don't know if beta is the right term, but it had stayed in beta for a long time in Nova, and it didn't have any neutron support. In Paris last year, it became apparent that the Nova guys wanted to rewrite it and to have and get rid of Nova Cells as a separate service and have that orchestration done by the core Nova scheduler, I believe. So what this is, so what we're going to do is we're going to we still think this is a really interesting development. Cells does solve a very real problem, and CERN and others are using it. So we're going to track its development and make sure that we incorporate the sort of Cells 2.0 as it comes online into the charms.
Ryan, so there's a question in channel, which I'm not keeping an eye on. Maybe I should be doing that. I'm in the wrong channel. Excellent. Are we in Cloud 1 or Cloud 2?
Cloud nothing.
Cloud 1. Cloud nothing. There you
go. So what was Sadiq's question, Ryan?
Okay, so the question in channel is OpenStack is getting stacks. Juju is getting network and storage. Doesn't it feel like the two start to overlap a lot?
So OpenStack has the concept via heat of infrastructure stacks. That is true. So that's the ability to model instances, networks, load balancers. You know, all the primary modeling language that OpenStack has, and he does allow you to model stacks of infrastructure very effectively. That kind of plays in a slightly different place to Juju. So Juju is very much about modeling services, and I think this is the fundamental difference between what Heat does and what Juju does. So Heat's modeling stacks of infrastructure. Juju's modeling services of pieces of software and how they relate to each other and how you scale out all those individual components. Now that does ultimately translate down into infrastructure, either on an OpenStack cloud or on bare metal using MAS. So they kind of play in the same space, but it kind of taking a different aspect from it. So Heat's slightly lower level is my take. It's about infrastructure modeling, and Juju's about service modeling. And I think that the two things are different from that perspective. Marco, is there anything else you wanted to add to that statement? That's kind of my take on things, but I'm sure you've thought about this stuff as well.
No, I think you summed it up rather well, actually. It is, I mean, they are achieving a similar end result, but they're going about the implementation in quite unique ways, and how Juju models this idea of orchestration versus how Heat is kind of taking this path of stacks and infrastructure and such.
And I think another key difference is what we were just talking about around baking all of your operational knowledge in. So whereas Heat is very, very much around kind of deployment and some auto scaling to a certain extent. So how you change your infrastructure over time depending on load. We want to start baking in things like actions. So the things you do to your cloud once you deploy. Heat does not have those concepts as far as I'm aware. So that's where Juju's going. It's about the services and the things you need to do with them over time. Whereas Heat's very much about the infrastructure, how you scale that, but based on demand or load or whatever it is. So similar but different. And I've completely lost my plot now. So where were we? So we talked about cells a bit. So something we had for 1504, which I forgot to mention, was some initial 0MQ support in some of the OpenStack charts. So for those of you who don't know, 0MQ is a really, really interesting piece of technology. So our Ubuntu OpenStack has very much been based around RabbitMQ. It's a centralized broker architecture. It has native clustering, does mirror queues and all that sort of good stuff. But fundamentally, things like cells are working around the limitations of what you can do with a single centralized message broker by having multiple message brokers with different sets of clients connecting to different brokers and stuff like that, and then gluing them together in various different ways. 0MQ kind of takes different tack on this. So 0MQ is there's no central broker in 0MQ. It's a messaging library that sits on top of standard socket mechanisms like unit sockets, IPC, TCP sockets, that sort of stuff, and provides you with a set of messaging semantics that just sit on top of TCP IP. So everything is edge to edge. There's no centralized broker infrastructure, and there's been an implementation of 0MQ support in the also messaging component in OpenStack for quite a number of years now. It was in danger of being kicked out of tree last cycle, but we spent some time reinvigorating its unit tests so that it was actually getting some testing and not breaking all the time, because it was broken for a couple of releases. And there's been a number of contributors upstream who have made some improvements to the code base and generally improved things. Canonical being among those. So I think there's a contributor from AW Cloud in China who are using this in production. So there are some production users of this technology. By avoiding that kind of centralized message broker, you avoid the bottleneck. So rather than all your messages going through a certain set of memory and cores, every message goes directly to where it needs to go. So if my Nova Cloud Controller node needs to send a message to a compute node to tell it to do something, it just does it directly to the compute node. There's no potential broker choke point in a single piece of infrastructure. So it's kind of really interesting from a scalability perspective. That said, it's not perfect. There are still a number of bugs in the Oslo messaging implementation. It means it doesn't quite work with Cinder multi backend yet, but I think those things will probably resolve themselves this cycle, next cycle. So it's looking like a compelling proposition alongside RabbitMQ for different types of deployment. We've got support in the Nova and Neutron charms for this, which are the main 2 pinch points from a messaging perspective right now. And I expect to have some enablement for other pieces during the 1510 cycle as well as support matures upstream.
So sorry,
go on.
I was going to say, if you wanted to use it right now with a full cloud, you'd have a RabbitMQ for your Cinder and
Ceilometer if you're deploying Ceilometer.
Right, and then you can use ZeroMQ for all the other.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, so you can use your MQ for Nova and Neutron, and just use it in to optimize route there. As I said, I wouldn't consider this a production-ready feature until it's consumable across the entirety of an OpenStack cloud, which it's not yet. But if people want to test the features, then go for it. It works pretty well. I've done some good testing on it, and it hangs together really nicely. So. Like I said, there's still more work to be done there, but it's definitely coming on as a feature. It's far and away much better than it was 6 months ago. So try it out. One of the things I missed from the 15.4 charm stuff was Corey's work on deployment from source. Corey, do you want to give us a quick 101 on that, and then we can talk about where we're going with that for this cycle?
Sure. I'm not offended, James.
I know. I didn't get my notes up till like 5 minutes ago, so I do apologize. I couldn't find them. Slightly embarrassing.
Yeah. So one of the things, one of my main focuses of the past cycle has been deploy from source with the OpenStack charms. We have a good core subset of charms that are supported at the moment, and with Cinder, Glance, Keystone, the Neutron charms, Nova Compute, OpenStack Dashboard, Nova Cloud Controller coming soon, and then the rest of the charms will get deployed from source support this next cycle. It seems to be working well. It takes advantage of a lot of the existing charm support. You can scale charms out. HA works. It works with everything so far that the charms currently support. It's enabled with a new config option called OpenStack-origin-git. I can point folks to some sample deployment bundles if they're interested. I think that's about it.
Cool. So in terms of kind of looking forward on that piece of work, I think we're going for kind of broader support. So we've got a number of charms that haven't been enabled yet, so we'll be looking to enable those. We had some challenges around isolation of deploy from source against system installed Python libraries. So I know Corey's been working away on that to make that a better story to kind of have more alignment with how a deploy from source from upstream would work. So, we're kind of trying to get to the best practice position. So this is ultimately consumable by anybody with any branch. I think one of the key challenges here is about how we track master branch support, because obviously as development iterates in the 6-month cycle, stuff changes, config options change. So I think what Corey and I have discussed is we'll probably track master development in our development charm branches, and then every 3 months you'll effectively get a stable branch that should support at that point in time the master branch. I think if we try and do it in stable, we'll just end up breaking people. So the master branch support will be primarily focused in our development charm branches. So I think that makes sense, but we'll see how that runs. Just something to highlight is we do have a whole load of OpenStack SDN support landing via Canonical's OIL program. So we've got a number of partners engaged there, and we've been supporting them in them developing their charm integration for OpenStack. So I know we have a few in pipeline, and I I'm expecting probably 5 to 6 of those in the next 6 months to land alongside the OpenStack charms in one state or another, so that people have more deployment options in terms of what SDN they choose. And the other thing I was going to mention was testing. So I don't know, this is something close to Ryan's heart. Something we quite often get asked when we're doing customer deployments is, okay, so you built me this beautiful cloud. It's fantastic. How do I know how it works? How do I benchmark it? And there's a number of tools out there. So we use Tempest extensively in terms of smoke testing and doing kind of more stress testing type activities for our own internal CI. And we've also used Rally, a benchmarking project, again, from OpenStack upstream from the guys at Mirantis, to effectively do load and stress testing and benchmarking of deployed clouds. We've done that on a big scale as well, upwards of 500 compute node type size clouds. And I know Mark and I have discussed this as well. I think we're going to try and get together an OpenStack testing charm that you can deploy alongside your OpenStack deployment and just relate to Keystone so it can get some credentials. And then that will have some actions to allow you to benchmark and test your cloud effectively without having to learn all the ins and outs about how to configure Tempest or Rally or whatever it is you're using. So Tempest and Rally will be probably our first two targets for that. And then we'll see how that goes. But they're kind of a stretch again. It's got a lot to do this cycle and not many heads, as in it's Liam. So I don't want to pop him. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully we'll get some more hands in and we'll get some more velocity on some of these things. So I'll just do a quick roundtable just to make sure I've covered everything. Is there anything I've missed, guys, for 1510 development that you wanted to add?
Not from me.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I think you covered it well.
I don't have anything to add.
Awesome. Marco, anything from you? Our host. He's saying thumbs up, so that's cool. Let's just do a quick channel check, make sure there's any questions. That's only Nihal there, so I don't think any more questions are going to be forthcoming. So I guess we can call it a wrap. We always manage to do these sessions in 30 minutes. It's almost like we need 30-minute sessions at the Ubuntu Online Summit. Who'd have thought it? So, cool. So I think we can call that a wrap. So thank you very much. I think the closing session's in 30 minutes. Is that right, Marco?
Yes, that's correct, and that'll be in the plenary track.
Awesome. Well, let's just give it a minute for questions, and then if that's it, then we can make coffee before plenary.
I'll go along with that. My cup is empty.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. Again, thank you guys for the updates on the what's going on in Kilo and the roadmap going forward. Appreciate it. And again, like James was saying, about 30 minutes we'll be having the wrap-up session for this Ubuntu Online Summit. So come back around then, and it'll be in the Ubuntu UOS plenary room. Check the schedule for the video link. And I think that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.